On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
This is the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Tuesday, September 26th. I'm Donal Ware. Takeaway Tuesday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. And let's take a look at the HBCU coaches and media polls, which were released on yesterday. And we have a split poll once again with the coaches going with North Carolina Central at number one by really pretty much a large margin, and the media going with Florida A&M at a much closer margin. In the coaches poll, North Carolina Central received a majority of the first place votes. Florida A&M received 2, Tennessee State received 1, but it was North Carolina Central who received the rest of the votes. So you had North Carolina Central, Florida A&M, Jackson State, Tennessee State at number 4, and Prairie View A&M at number 5. 6 through 10 look like this: Hampton, Howard, Norfolk State. And we actually had a tie at number 9 between Alabama A&M and Grambling. And the thing about all of the teams in the coaches poll, 7 of those teams won football games. The other 3 had byes. So no teams this week in the coaches poll lost football games. In the media poll, Florida A&M at number 1, who received 13 first place votes, followed by North Carolina Central at number 2. The Eagles received 9 first place votes, and the Rattlers outdistanced the Eagles by 3 points. Benedict at number 3, followed by Jackson State at number 4, Tuskegee number 5. 6 through 10 looks like this: Virginia State, Prairie View A&M, Hampton, Virginia Union, and Morgan State. Of the 10 teams in the media poll, only 2 lost football games: Virginia Union and Morgan State. Everybody else, as I look down the poll, had football games. And, as I look at the media poll, surprised not to see Tennessee State in the media poll. I thought the win, and again, part of that is a little bit, I think, of that. And, as a voter, once upon a time on these polls, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind. So Tennessee State didn't necessarily play. They weren't in the poll, or the Tigers weren't in the poll the week before. And so the Tigers didn't get in this week. But I thought 2 weeks ago that the win by Tennessee State was huge against Gardner-Webb, because, again, you're talking about a very good Gardner-Webb program, one that won the Big South last year. You have the combination of the Big South and the OBC Conference for 2023. Our HBCU National Players of the Week: Isaiah Major, the linebacker from Florida A&M, had a fantastic game. 12 tackles, 11 of those were solo tackles. He had a pick 6, returned 40 yards, which sealed the victory for the Rattlers. He also had a tackle for loss, and he's amongst the leaders in terms of solo tackles on the season. Brian Greer, the linebacker for Fayetteville State, our other HBCU National Player of the Week, he had 10 tackles. 6 of those were solos, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. And that was a good ball game. 10-7. Fayetteville State wins that game over Virginia Union, and a field goal with 6 seconds remaining was the difference in the ball game. Now, as Virginia Union was driving to take a lead of itself in the fourth quarter, you had Greer that came up with the forced fumble on one of the drives, a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. And then on the next drive for Virginia Union, he had 2 big tackles on second and third downs that enabled, of course, Fayetteville State to then kick a field goal and come away with the victory. So takeaways from week 4 in HBCU football. Number one, you continue to have several teams that are still undefeated. Benedict, Tuskegee, Virginia State, and Allen are all undefeated. Allen with a big win, as a matter of fact, a big win last week. And you look at the Yellow Jackets getting the 6-point victory on the road at Central State. So you have those teams, and Teddy Keaton joined us last week. As a matter of fact, if you missed that conversation with Teddy Keaton, you can log onto our website at boxtorow.com and check it out on the Box to Row podcast. So that's number one. You still have a number of teams that are 4 teams that are still undefeated in the poll. My number 2 takeaway is Florida A&M. I think the Rattlers are the team to beat. And still, listen, we have 2/3 of the season remaining. But at this point, when I look at the SWAC, I look at what Florida A&M is doing. It's already gotten the victory over Jackson State, another divisional matchup against Alabama State, who could have challenged. Now, you still have Alabama A&M left to play. I mean, I understand that. But so far, so good, especially within the division for Florida A&M. And this is a really, really good football team. Jeremy Musa is doing a really, really good job in terms of distribution of the football, protecting the football as well. But this defense is really, really good. This defense is so sound, okay? Very, very sound for Willie Simmons and the Florida A&M Rattlers. So that's sort of my number 1 takeaway from week 4. Then my number 2 takeaway, because my number 1 takeaway was, of course, still the undefeated teams that we have in HBCU football, which there are 4 undefeated teams in HBCU football as things stand. It was good to see Langston get its first victory of the season. I know Quentin Morgan there. They had a sort of a weird schedule. They started the season out, then had a bye week immediately after beginning the season, then a loss, but then able to get the victory over Texas College, which is another one of my takeaways. Boy, Texas College. And I look at 2 programs with this next takeaway. Texas College, or 3. Texas College, Mississippi Valley State, and Lincoln of Missouri could all be winless on the season. And I mean, that would really, again, I understand Lincoln's situation, because Lincoln is playing in a very tough conference, one of the better Division II conferences in the nation. It is really, it's navigated Lincoln the last, 10, 12 years between the Great Lakes Valley Conference and also the MIAA. So this year's a wash, even though they're playing an MIAA schedule, because the schedule is already set. They're going to go back to the Great Lakes Conference on next year. I look at Valley 45-3 to North Carolina Central, a loss in Indianapolis. The Eagles playing the backup quarterback and still able to get the victory soundly. Okay. And then I look at Texas College, and that's a program that has really, really struggled over a 10-year. I mean, I think over a 10-year period, Texas College may have, 5 or 6 wins, perhaps. So that's a program that is really, really struggling. Another one of my takeaways, West Virginia State. I think this is the year that the Yellow Jackets can get it done in terms of winning the Mountain East Conference. And at least if not winning, because that Mountain East Conference is so tough, you're going to get more than likely 2 teams into the playoffs. So I mean, that's a big win against Glenville State. Glenville State was also undefeated in Mountain East play. So when I look at what West Virginia State has done, and this is the thing, others are contributing. Donovan Riddick the quarterback hasn't had necessarily his best performances in back-to-back weeks, yet West Virginia State is getting it done and got it done in fine fashion, 31-21 over Glenville State. And so I think that this is the year that Virginia State can definitely get it done. So a couple of my takeaways from week 4 in HBCU football, just as a reminder before I get out of here, this week's HBCU Football Daily Podcast right now is fluid in terms of doing these podcasts. Right now, I've got some things that are going on that I've got to deal with. So these are fluid. Going to try to do this as best as I can. Should have a weekend edition of Box to Row as well, which can be heard on a radio station near you, as well as on Sirius XM on the HBCU channel, 9 a.m. Eastern. That's 8 a.m. Central Time and 6 a.m. Pacific Time, as well as Fridays on Sirius XM College Sports Radio, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central, and 3 Pacific as well. So we've got a lot of content, some previous content, some great interviews. Again, you can listen to the Box to Row podcast if you hadn't checked that out. That can be listened to online at boxtorow.com. Tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can watch on the Box to Row YouTube channel, as well as listen on boxtorow.com and iHeartMedia.com. Continue to check back, and I'll talk with you real soon.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at boxtorow.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on Box to Row with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on Sirius XM on HBCU, Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box to Row for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.